All right, everybody, we are back this week for UFC 310 preview, predictions, and breakdown. This time, it's a main event for the flyweight championship between the reigning, defending, who many people believe to be number one flyweight in the entire world, in the cannibal, Alexandre Pantoja, taking on the former rising champion, making his UFC debut, to battle the UFC flyweight champion, and that is Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura versus Alexandre Pantoja for the flyweight championship of the world. Then in the co-main event of the evening, it is a 5-round bout at 170 pounds in the welterweight division between Shavkat, Rakhmonov taking on Ian Machado Garry. You have two undefeated fighters battling to determine who will challenge Belal Muhammad for the welterweight championship in their next fight. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, guys, we're back with UFC predictions. Obviously, we had that week off, but we did have MMA action. We had some mixed martial arts fights last week, and that was obviously the PFL Championships, which we broke down and went 4 out of 6 on official predictions. We got Gadzi Rabadanov by KO. I think we even called round 3, which is the round he got the knockout in. We had Shamil Musayev by KO. I believe we called the correct round there. We did have Goltsov by KO. He ended up getting a triangle choke in the first round. We missed on Impa Kasanganay. We got Dakota Dachiva by knockout. And then we missed on Brendan Loughnane, even though the fight did go to a decision, but he pretty much got dominated. So 4 out of 6 on the championship fights. 4 out of 7 if you count, even though I'm not going to count it because I didn't put it out there, but I did have Jose Perez in his fight, and it looked like he was going to finish his opponent, and then, I don't know, dude, something didn't seem right about that. I talked to him after the fight, talked to his manager. Yeah, we both agree that there was something off about the way that fight didn't get stopped at the end of the second round, but, you know, call it whatever you will. It is what it is. But, yeah, man, I mean, let's just move into this week. Let's move into UFC 310, which is actually a really decent card. A lot of competitive matchups. And let's kick it off in the welterweight division between Michael Chiesa, coming off that first round rear naked choke submission over Tony Ferguson, taking on Max Payne Griffin, who's coming off of a decision victory over Jeremiah Wells. This is an interesting fight, a pretty good fight to start the card off with, and there are going to be some fights we skip today. I mean, I'll put the predictions or synopsis for those fights in the comment section below, because I'm sure somebody will ask, because it never fails. Somebody's always asking about the fights we don't break down. No matter how many times I say that we don't break down every fight, you know, it is what it is. But Chiesa versus Max Griffin, you know, Chiesa is not a good striker. If you can put the pressure on him, if you can get him on that back foot, you can use your strikes to piece him up. He's also not the most active fighter in the UFC. If there was a winnable fight for Tony Ferguson in the UFC, I would have thought it would have been a Michael Chiesa. But Chiesa did what he needed to do. He got hit with a couple jabs from Tony Ferguson, but eventually caught him up in a body lock, took him down, took his back, and locked up a rear naked choke, switched the grip back, and that was all she wrote. Got that rear naked choke and finished him off. You know, Max Griffin is not the best striker either, but he uses good footwork. He moves good laterally. He moves in and out, and he has a good jab. And I do think that the jab of Max Griffin is something that will give Michael Chiesa a lot of trouble. You know, he's a guy who, like I said, he doesn't like to get hit. If you do land some good strikes on him, he will kind of back up and he'll shoot telegraphed shots, which makes it easier for the opponent to stop the takedown. And he's also very liable to getting submitted via a Darce choke, maybe a guillotine choke, because when he shoots, he kind of leaves his head out there a little bit too long. He penetrates on the shot a little bit too deep with the upper part of his body and doesn't use that penetration step to really close the gap. And he can leave himself open to getting submitted there. I do think that Max Griffin probably has a good enough guillotine to submit Chiesa, but I don't really think he's going to be looking to entertain the grappling or the ground. Jeremiah Wells is a very solid wrestler. He's a lot stronger than Chiesa, in my opinion. And he was able to stop a lot of his takedowns. When he got taken down, he worked his way back up. He was able to time the chaotic movement and trip Jeremiah Wells catching him off balance and getting takedowns himself. He knows how to win fights. He has pretty high fight IQ. He can get clipped. Chiesa does have decent straight punches. We saw him even clip up Sean Brady, even though Sean Brady was able to use his wrestling and take him down and control him on the ground. I think Max Griffin is the much better striker. I think he outstrikes Michael Chiesa at a pretty high clip in this fight, whether it goes the distance or it doesn't. I do think Chiesa's live to get a submission finish, but I think Griffin has decent enough takedown defense, decent enough ability to work his way back up to the feet, and good enough cage wrestling to be able to avoid any of the takedowns from Chiesa. Chiesa's strong, he's long. Maybe he can pull Griffin off the cage, pull the one hip off, shoot the one hook in and throw the other hook over the back and jump on his back. Maybe get a body triangle. I think if Chiesa wins this fight, it's a lot of control time, but I don't necessarily see a world where he's going to be able to control Max Griffin for 2 out of the 3 rounds, and I don't think he's really going to be able to submit Max Griffin. So in summation, I'm going to go Max Griffin here. I think he's live for a KO because, like I say, Chiesa doesn't like to get hit. I think he's live for a submission because if he does rock Chiesa and Chiesa panic wrestles, he might catch him in an ninja choke. He might catch him in a guillotine. Do not sleep on Max Payne Griffin by submission. But I'm going to take the safe route here. I'm going to go Max Griffin by decision. I think he wins 2 out of the 3 rounds pretty clearly. Maybe the first round he gets taken down, gets controlled, avoids the submissions, defends pretty well. He's pretty good defensively, and I don't think there's much of a striking threat from Chiesa on the feet. And Griffin should be able to kind of walk him into shots and use his jab to set up other combinations in this fight. So give me Max Payne Griffin. I'm going to go Max Griffin, 29-28 unanimous decision. But like I said, a finish is definitely live, but I like Max Payne here to get the job done. All right, up next is a battle in the flyweight division. You have a bout between Cody Durden taking on the fearless Joshua Van. 11-2 for Josh Van, 4-1 in the UFC. Cody Durden, 17-6-1, coming off of that submission victory via ninja choke over Matt Schnell. And prior to that, a pretty dominant performance until he got caught with an uppercut and knocked out by Bruno Silva. Not the Bruno Silva who fought Alex Pereira. But looking at this fight, man, this is a tough one to break down because neither of these guys are very durable. I know Van's only been KO'd once in the UFC. That was against Charles Johnson in the 3rd round of a fight that, you know, probably was 1-1 going into round 3, but it looked like the momentum was building on the side of Josh Van. And then you saw, you saw Charles Johnson catch him with that little hook, and then switch stance and follow it with an uppercut up the middle and knock him out early in the 3rd round. But we've seen Josh Van get hurt. We've seen him get wobbled. Van's coming off that win over Edgar Chairez at UFC 306, Noche UFC. That was a fight where he got clipped up, got beat up as well, but, you know, he was able to stay in there, didn't get finished, didn't get knocked out, and started putting the combinations on Edgar Chairez. And Chairez is a pretty decent fighter. You know, he's not a slouch. He's not a guy that comes off the regional scene and doesn't have any experience. I mean, Chairez is a dangerous fighter, and he is very good, and Van was able to stay in there and put it on him. I believe Josh Van to be better in every aspect of this fight besides the wrestling than Cody Durden. If this fight's on the feet, I think Durden's getting pieced up, but I do worry about the durability of Joshua Van. Van, you know, gets hit, he gets rocked, he gets wobbled, and Durden isn't the most technical striker, but he does, you know, pack a pretty decent punch. I wouldn't sit here and say he's a knockout artist. You know, he knocked out JP Buys. Okay, great. You know, everybody and their mother has knocked out JP Buys. Not ripping on the guy, but it is what it is. I don't think he's going to be able to knock out a Joshua Van, but I could see a world where Durden clips him with a right hand or clips him with an overhand right and rocks Van and causes him to panic shoot, and then Durden wraps up that ninja choke. Durden grabs a front choke and gets a guillotine and submits him. I think Josh Van, you know, the more I watch him, the more it makes me nervous to ever put my money on a guy like Joshua Van. And Durden is the same way, where he looks decent, but he gets hit way too much. He gets rocked. He gets wobbled, puts himself in compromising positions. And I would worry a lot if I was putting my money on Durden as well as the underdog. I think this should be lined pretty close to a pick'em. I think the line is right. Last I saw, I think Josh Van was minus 160, minus 150. I would put it around there. But I think whoever wins is going to look like a much bigger favorite when the fight ends. You just have to make sure you're on the right side. Durden, like I said, decent jab, decent overhand rights, packs a little bit of a punch. could be a problem against the guy with the durability issues of Joshua Van, the susceptibility to getting rocked. Josh Van, way better boxer, good 1-2s, good left hooks, really good combinations, finishes his combinations with kicks, can catch the opponent on the lateral movement moving out, good body shots, good shots up the middle. And I don't really think Josh Van likes getting pressured that much either, and I know that Durden is a very high-level pressure fighter. Not a high-level pressure fighter, but he's a very high-pressure fighter. He's going to be on that front foot. He's going to be throwing combinations in your face. He's going to be looking to wrestle. He's going to be looking to break off the takedowns and land some shots. He's going to be looking to just make it a nasty, dirty fight. And to be honest, if I was going to bet anything, I'll tell you this right now, I would play Joshua Van KO round 2, round 3. Because I know Durden's pretty durable. I don't expect him to get finished in round 1. I think if Van wins by a finish, it's more than likely a knockout. I think it plays out kind of similar to the Felipe Bunes fight. If you remember that fight where Van kind of got pieced up in that first round, he got taken down, got beat up, and then he just started putting the pace on Felipe Bunes and just rip into the body, rip into the head, 1-2 rip to the body, and just started putting it on him. And I kind of see a similar situation where Durden has a good first round, lands some shots, maybe rocks Van, gets some takedowns, isn't able to get a submission. Van gets up towards the end of the round, starts putting the pace, starts putting the pressure, starts getting on that front foot, ripping the left hook to the body, left hook up top, right hand, 1-2 down the middle, rip the left hook to the body, jab, left hook, rear uppercut, 1-2-3, body, head kick, and really just starts to put it on Cody Durden. And I think he pushes him back and breaks him in the late portion of the second and into the third round. So I'm going to go with the fearless. I'm going Joshua Van, late second round TKO. I think he can just break a guy like Durden. Durden's tough. He's hard-headed. He's not a quitter, but I think the style of Van, the volume, the forward pressure, the fact that Durden gets hit so much, I do think that he will break him, maybe in the third round. But I think I'm going to be looking to play Josh Van KO round 2, round 3. But I'm going to go the fearless Joshua Van via a second round TKO against Cody Durden. Would not surprise me if Durden clipped him with a big shot, grabbed his neck and submitted him. Wouldn't surprise me if Durden knocked him out. I know Durden's not a knockout artist, but like I said, Van gets clipped and gets wobbled in a lot of fights. So I do like Josh Van, though. I think he's much cleaner, much more technical. I think he has the better cardio in terms of, putting the output on and pushing a pace. I think he can push Durden a little bit more. Durden's got a really high wrestling pace, but not the highest striking pace, and I think that's what we're going to see here. So Josh Van, late second round TKO over Cody Durden. Up next, you got a battle in the welterweight division between Randy Rude Boy Brown and Bryan the Butcher Battle. This is one of my favorite fights on the card. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I am very excited for this fight. I've never been the biggest Randy Brown fan, and most of the time I analyze his fights pretty on point. Usually if I'm picking Brown, it's by decision. He's a very long, crisp, technical striker at 170 pounds. He's going to have a big reach advantage on Bryan Battle, and it's not going to look like it by the numbers, but the way he uses his reach and range, it's going to look like he's a lot longer, and he's just built a lot longer than Bryan Battle. Using a jab, using a 1-2, catching the opponent up the middle with the uppercut, really good knees up the middle because of how long and lanky his frame is. Jab, 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 hook, uppercut, 1-2 down the middle, cross hook, pivot out, jab, rear knee, jab, uppercut, knee up the middle. He throws very long strikes because he has a long, lanky frame. That's just the way that Randy Brown is. But at the same time, like we talked about with the last fight, Brown has some durability issues, some real durability issues where he'll come into fights and look very good, get clipped with a shot, get knocked down, get rocked with a shot, get taken down, give up a bad position on the ground. And I think against a guy like Bryan Battle can be hit. I wouldn't be surprised if Randy Brown clipped him and knocked him out. I wouldn't be surprised if he landed a knee up the middle and knocked him out. We haven't seen a lot of durability issues from Bryan Battle in the UFC, but we've seen him get dropped by Rinat Fakhretdinov. We've seen him get hit with some big shots and tend to eat them. But I think Battle's coming into his own, and I think Randy Brown is more at the tail end of his UFC career than he is in the prime of his career. He always builds up a couple good wins and then gets shut down. Builds up a win and gets shut down. And I think it's going to be a similar thing here where, Randy Brown beat Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. That's a good win. But that's a fight that was very close. Arguably, maybe you could have given it to Dos Santos. I'm not saying that would have been the right decision, but He gave up some bad positions, almost got rear naked choked, got put on his back, but he did reverse. And I think Battle's good enough to where he can control Randy Brown on the ground. He can get a submission. We've seen him get multiple submissions. He's got very good jiu-jitsu. He's got good forward pressure. And if he can close that range and that distance, he can start to put it on a guy like Randy Brown, who's very good when he's in control, who's very good when he's in control of the range. But when you're in close and you're pushing him back, he tends to get off balance. He might slip up and fall into the cage. He might slip up and allow you to catch him with a big shot. And I think Battle has the perfect style to not only beat a guy like Randy Brown, but to finish a guy like Randy Brown. He might get hit with some big shots. He might get hurt. But he's going to keep his guard up. He's going to walk forward. He's going to start throwing those 1-2s. He's got a very good ability to read when his opponents are starting to break, and that's when he'll start to up that pressure. And Brown's a guy where if he's in control, he looks very good. But if you can put your foot on the gas pedal, if you can push him back, if you can back him up and close off that distance that he's not going to be able to really fight off of a different distance than the one he's able to control, if that makes sense. And I don't think Bryan Battle's going to allow him to control him and pick him apart. Now, Brown did catch Muslim Salikov with a big 1-2. I think it was a jab, right hand, or a jab, left hook, right hand, and knocked him out. It was a clean knockout. Very good win. And look what Salikov just did to Song Kenan. But Song Kenan doesn't have the best career in the UFC. His biggest moment is pretty much rocking Ian Garry and then getting finished later in the fight. And Ian Garry's somebody we're going to talk about later. But in this fight, I think the foot on the gas pedal, the pushing ass to the grass style of Bryan Battle, where he's just going to keep coming forward. No matter what you throw at him, I think he will break down Randy Brown, and I think he will TKO Randy Brown. I like Bryan Battle a lot. I'm surprised he's not a bigger favorite, but it makes sense, with the striking style, the boxing, and the distance control of Brown. But I think Bryan Battle's the perfect fighter to break through that defensive wall that Randy Brown tries to put up in every single fight. And he's not going to allow Randy Brown to control that distance. So give me Bryan Battle. Give me the butcher. I'm going to go Bryan Battle via a second-round TKO over Randy Brown. I could see a submission. I think he could rock Randy Brown, jump on his back, rear naked choke him. Best case scenario would be to take Bryan Battle inside the distance. I think he does finish Randy Brown at a higher clip than he does, winning a decision, because I think if it goes to a decision, then Randy Brown's probably controlling the range and distance and not allowing Bryan Battle to get in close to be able to get off on his game. But I think Randy Brown, like I said, I think he's on the decline. I think Bryan Battle is on the up and up. Give me the butcher. Give me Bryan Battle, late second round TKO over Randy Brown. Could be a club and sub, maybe a submission. He grabs his neck after he rocks him. But I'm going to go Bryan Battle here to finish the Rude Boy. All right, up next is a battle in the featherweight division between Movsar Evloev, who's undefeated at 18-0, taking on the former bantamweight champion coming off a win over Kelvin Kattar in Aljamain, the Funkmaster Sterling, 24-4 on the side of Sterling. I'm going to be real. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this fight. I've never been the biggest fan of Evloev. I've never been the biggest fan of Sterling. These are kind of two of the fighters I don't like going up against each other. I think that the fighter who has the better striking is Evloev 100%. I think the grappling is going to be pretty close, but I think the striking success of Evloev is going to make the grappling easier for Evloev and make the defensive grappling easier, because it might draw out the shots a little bit more telegraphed from Sterling and make it easier for Evloev to defend. The performance against Arnold Allen for Evloev was very good. He did almost get caught in an ninja choke. It was a very, very close submission from Arnold Allen. Almost got that submission victory. Didn't happen. Evloev was able to survive. Evloev did go the distance with Diego Lopez on short notice. Almost got caught in a bunch of submissions. But look how good Diego Lopez has looked in his UFC career after that Evloev fight. He hasn't dropped a fight since. In this one, like I said, I think the better striker is Evloev. The better control of range, the better footwork, the better boxing combinations, the better kicks. That's all Evloev. The striking of Aljamain is used as a means to an end to close the distance, to allow Aljamain Sterling to get into close enough range to get to the clinch, to get to the legs, to take the body lock, to get to the back. And, if Aljamain gets on the back of Evloev, there's going to be some trouble, without a doubt. The chokes of Sterling, the control of Sterling, it's all great. But I don't really think that he's going to be able to get to that position, and I think Evloev will be able to control the range and distance and kind of pick off Aljamain Sterling. Wouldn't be surprised if Evloev won this fight by knockout. I think he can catch Aljamain as he comes in, drop him, and put him down. I wouldn't be surprised if he rocked him and maybe submitted him. I would be more surprised at a submission than a knockout if I'm on the side of Evloev. If Aljamain wins, he'd have to get a lot of control time. He'd have to take the back and maybe lock up a submission. He's more than live to do that against anybody. Take your back, body triangle, human backpack, get the neck, and get the choke. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Evloev. I think Evloev wins this fight. I think he can win by KO, but I'm going to go with the fact that Aljamain's durable enough and awkward enough to make it to the distance because Evloev's not much of a finisher to begin with. Couldn't finish a bag of chips if there was only 3 chips left in the bag. I'm going to go Evloev by decision. Give me 30-27. Unanimous decision for Movsar Evloev to remain defeated and remain one of the most boring fighters in the entire division. But, yeah, I got to go Movsar here. I don't really think you can pick Sterling at this point. All right, next up in the welterweight division, you have a battle between the silent assassin, Vicente Luque, taking on Themba Gorimbo. Obviously, Gorimbo coming in. Sorry about that. Gorimbo coming in on short notice to fill in for Nick Diaz. Now, Nick Diaz and Luque, that's a fight that, although it wouldn't excite me that much, I would have rather liked to have. I would rather have seen that than Themba Gorimbo versus Luque. I think Gorimbo is more than live to hurt Luque on the feet. I think he is live to just grapple him, win the minutes, control him, take his back, go for submissions, not get him, and just win this fight on control. He didn't finish Nico Price. I was pretty surprised he wasn't able to finish him. And, Luque got finished with ground and pound by Joaquin Buckley, but, look how good Buckley's looked. He got that KO over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in the 3rd round of a fight that he was pretty much controlling up to that point. I think Luque has good enough kickboxing to hurt Themba Gorimbo, but we haven't really seen him get hurt in the UFC. I think he can rock him. I think he can put his combinations on him. I do think that the length and distance of Gorimbo could give Luque some trouble. We've seen Luque get hurt in a lot of fights. We've seen him come back from some. We've seen him, fall apart in some of those, sequences where he was hurt. Only been knocked out, twice now. Once with the ground and pound of Joaquin Buckley, and then obviously that straight left hand from Jeff Neal that sat him down against the cage and gave him a brain bleed. Ever since Luque had that brain bleed, he's kind of been a little bit different of a fighter. More less eager to get into a brawl, more eager to try to, pick his spots, use his wrestling more than we've seen before. And I think if Luque comes in as the aggressive fighter that he used to be, then he can definitely win here. If he comes in and he's too tentative and just kind of standing there with his guard up looking for counters, I think Gorimbo probably picks him apart. Lands the shots, lands front kicks to the body, lands 1-2s. Moves around pretty well, probably gets some takedowns as well, gets some control time, and wins a boring decision. I don't really see Gorimbo finishing Luque. Would not surprise me at this point because he looked just awful in that Buckley fight, but I wouldn't be surprised if Gorimbo finishes Luque. Looking at this fight, though, I think it's kind of a coin flip. It should point to Gorimbo after the recent performances of Luque, but I think if there is a fight that Luque can win, it might be this one. I think he could probably catch Themba Gorimbo and hurt him and put him down. I'd like to pick Luque. I'm a pretty big Luque fan. He was getting ready for Nick Diaz. I think that was a very winnable fight for him. Probably would have knocked out Nick in that fight. I think this is a tougher fight than Nick Diaz, but at the same time, I think there are a lot tougher fights he could have gotten in this division. Gorimbo's tough. He's got a lot of power, but he really only knocked out Pete Rodriguez, who obviously isn't UFC level. Knocking out Mike Jackson doesn't make you UFC level. I think this is a fight where it's a coin flip. The momentum, everything like that is on the side of Themba Gorimbo. He's been looking good, just some boring fights, but looking good. Control, good takedowns, good wrestling, good clinch work, good striking at distance. I'm going to go with Luque, though. I'm going to go with Luque to get back on track. Now, you don't have to take my word on this one. I'm a pretty big Luque fan, but it would not surprise me if Gorimbo won. It wouldn't surprise me if Gorimbo got a finish. But, I'm going to go Luque by a knockout. I think he's going to find the chin of Themba Gorimbo and hopefully get back on track and maybe get a couple more wins. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if Gorimbo won. I'm just not that impressed with Gorimbo. He's winning fights that he should win. He hasn't really fought anybody that high level yet. And I think all the people that Gorimbo has beaten, Luque could beat them as well. So I think it's close. I'm going to take the dog. Give me Vicente Luque to get into close range, land a left hook, hurt Themba Gorimbo, and finish him off with ground and pound. Give me the silent assassin, Vicente Luque, to defeat Themba Gorimbo via second round TKO in this fight. All right, next up is in the light heavyweight division with Dominick Reyes taking on Anthony Lionheart Smith. Both of these guys are kind of at the decline more than the incline. Yes, Dominick Reyes got that first round knockout over Dustin Jacoby in a fight where he was an underdog. He came through with a big knockout. That was a fight where I was on Reyes. I thought that was a very winnable matchup for him because of the durability concerns of Jacoby and because of the fact that Jacoby doesn't really, how would I put this? He doesn't really put a stamp on any of his wins. The only one he did was against Dawoon Jung, and you look at how Dawoon Jung's been looking in the UFC. So I don't even know if he's in the UFC anymore, but he hasn't looked the greatest. Lost to Carlos Olberg by submission, and then lost most recently to Umar Sy, which I believe is the brother of Sadabu Sy from the PFL, the former PFL champion. I think Anthony Smith's the better grappler than Dominick Reyes. We've seen Smith, turn back a lot of prospects, turn back a lot of guys where we thought he was going to get destroyed. And I do think it's a winnable fight for Smith. He has a good jab, a decent one too. Really good jiu-jitsu ability to take the back, looking for the rear naked choke, very good control, but I just don't think Smith has it anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if Smith won because I think Dominick Reyes, yeah, he got that win over Dustin Jacoby, but look at how he's looked in his last few fights. I don't think Dominick Reyes is that great either, but I think Dominick Reyes has more confidence coming off that last win, and I think he can knock out Anthony Smith. I think Smith can hurt Dominick Reyes because I think his chin is pretty much gone at this point. I think Reyes just landed before Jacoby did, and that's kind of what we expected to happen. But I think either guy can win this fight. I think it could go to decision. I think more than likely it finishes inside the distance. But I'm going to take Dominick Reyes. He is a big favorite. I just have a little bit more faith, maybe a smidge more faith in Reyes than I do in Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith hasn't showed me much of anything since that Jimmy Crute fight. And I know he won against Vitor Petrino. He grabbed that guillotine and got the submission. I think in this fight, again, Smith is kind of submission or bust, but we haven't really seen Reyes get submitted. I do think he has decent enough boxing, and the chin of Reyes could be an issue where maybe he clips him on the chin and knocks him out. Again, it wouldn't surprise me. I think this fight should be a coin flip on the odds. There's no reason that Reyes should be a huge favorite. There's no reason that, Anthony Smith should be a huge underdog. I think at these odds, money line wise, you got to take Anthony Smith. Again, the UFC odds on the website are off, but I don't know what the actual odds are for this one. Let me check. So the odds for this fight, they've got Reyes minus 340, Smith plus 270. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I mean, Reyes has one win, but look at how he looked before that. If we're looking money line, it's dog or pass, plus 270 on Anthony Smith. Probably want to play Smith by submission or Smith inside the distance. But realistically, I do think Dominick Reyes will knock out Anthony Smith. I think he's going to catch him coming in, rock him, wobble him, and put him down. Like I said, neither guy has looked great in recent form, but I just have a little bit more faith in Reyes to continue the upward trajectory and the momentum than I do with Anthony Smith, who got that guillotine over Vitor Petrino. But, that was a good win, but what does he have now? What does he have left? And I think Reyes has a little bit more left in the tank. So give me Dominick Reyes. Give me the Devastator to get the job done via a first-round knockout. Maybe second round. I could see second round as well. But I think give me second round. Dominick Reyes, second-round knockout. I think he just is going to be able to land a big counter, hurt Anthony Smith, who gets hurt in a lot of his fights at this point, and put him down. I don't think he's going to engage in the grappling. I don't think he's going to engage in the wrestling. And I think Reyes is going to put him out. So give me Dominick Reyes, second-round knockout over Anthony Smith. And yeah, that's about all I got to say for this one. All right, next up is a battle in the featherweight division between Nate the Train Landwehr taking on the Korean Superboy, Dooho Choi. Looking at this fight, I see it as 50-50. I think that either guy can win, obviously for different reasons. I think Landwehr is going to have the better cardio. He's going to push the pace. He's going to push forward. We've seen him have power, in knockouts over Jamal Emmers. He's found submissions in other fights as well. And he's a finisher. He looks to come forward. He looks to break you. He looks to take your best shots early and then break you later on down the stretch. I think that's exactly how you beat a guy like Dooho Choi. You have to weather the early storm, avoid the big power shots, push forward, get him on the back foot, push him up against the cage, elbows, uppercuts, dirty box, knees to the body, elbows over the top. I think that's the exact way you beat a guy like Dooho Choi. But surviving the early crisp boxing combinations, the fact that Dooho Choi does have wrestling that he can, he keeps it in his back pocket, but he can use wrestling. We saw him use wrestling against Kyle Nelson, get multiple takedowns, and that was a fight where I fully believe Dooho Choi won, got the point taken away. The fight was a draw, but, if that point didn't get taken away or deducted, then Dooho Choi would have won that fight, and we wouldn't have to deal with the bullshit Kyle Nelson experience that I just can't stand anymore. Nate Landwehr, he always gets clipped. He's always a defensive liability early. You can hit him on the chin. You can rock him. You can drop him. He's been dropped so many times. He's been hurt so many times, and he finds a way to come back. This seems like a fight where it could be a similar situation, but I know that Dooho Choi can push later in fights. I know Dooho Choi can continue to get back to his feet, continue to throw back, in combinations. Look at the Cub-Swanson fight, one of the best fights of all time back at UFC 206. Got into brawls, got into wars, and found a way to come back. Got dropped, came back, hurt Cub-Swanson, threw some shots back at Swanson. Yes, Swanson did take over late, but, this is a coin flip to me. Can Landwehr survive early, or will Dooho Choi start landing on his chin and put him down? I'm going to go with Dooho Choi. I wouldn't be surprised if Landwehr wins, but I do think Dooho Choi, his boxing and his combinations and his power is just going to be too much for Nate Landwehr. You can survive getting dropped. You can survive getting rocked a few times, but eventually you just can't survive anymore. And Landwehr's up there in age. He's getting older. He still takes a lot of damage, and I think Dooho Choi can put that shot on him that finally puts him away. You look at Bill Algeo, and Algeo's not a guy who gets finished. He loses sometimes, but most of the time he's losing by decision. He did get finished by Kyle Nelson. That doesn't look the greatest. But, Dooho Choi caught that angle perfectly. Boom, banged a left hook, and almost, I think it broke his orbital. Or at least that's what it seemed like with the reaction to the injury. I think if you're going to take Landwehr, you take him late, round 2, round 3 finish. And if you're on Dooho Choi, I think you take knockout. Just Dooho Choi KO. He is an underdog on the money line, so you could probably play the money line and just, play it safe. Maybe you take Dooho Choi by split decision. I think this fight's going to be close, and more often than not, I see Dooho Choi knocking out Nate Landwehr because it's not like he just has a lot of power. He also sets up his shots very well. Crisp, clean boxing combinations, and that's something that I think is going to catch a guy who's defensively irresponsible like Landwehr. So give me Dooho Choi. Give me Dooho Choi by knockout. I'm going to go Dooho Choi round 2 knockout over Nate Landwehr. I think he's going to put him down, and I think he will get a finish. And I think the Superboy is going to get back on track with another win. 2 finishes in a row. Give me the Korean Superboy, Dooho Choi, to defeat Nate the Train Landwehr via second round knockout. All right, the next fight up is in the heavyweight division. In a rematch between Ciryl Gane and Alexandre Volkov. This is a fight that was a fight night main event. And, when you read the scorecards, it was a unanimous decision for Ciryl Gane. But going into that fight, I remember specifically thinking that it was 2-2 heading into the 5th round. I thought it was Gane 2 rounds, Volkov 2 rounds, and whoever won the 5th round won the fight. I gave the 5th round to Gane. I remember thinking Gane won the fight after the fight was over, but I believe on the predictions originally, I had picked Alexandre Volkov, and I believe I picked him by a decision if you go back and listen to it. Now, I think at this point, Volkov is on the upward trajectory coming off of a couple wins, while Gane is on the downward trajectory. Volkov got a big win over Sergey Pavlovich, where a lot of people just expected him to get put down early and just knocked out cold, and that was going to be it. Gane got a win over Sergey Spivak. He looked pretty good against Tai Tuivasa, but, almost got knocked out in that fight. I think this fight, again, is close, but with it being a 3-rounder, I'm actually going to side with Volkov here. I think that it's going to be close enough to where the rounds are going to be super close, and I don't think there's going to be a finish. I could see Volkov using his wrestling. I could see him using takedowns, getting to the top position, and trying to secure rounds with takedowns and top control. I think Gane can get takedowns as well, but I think it would be a lot harder for Gane to take down Volkov than it would be for Volkov to take down Gane. I think Gane's a lot more fleet-footed. I think he's a lot more evasive. He's a lot better on the outside. But I think the length and reach of Volkov, he's going to be able to crack Ciryl Gane a couple times. And even if he isn't, let's say he's not able to hit him too much, I don't think Gane's going to be able to crack Volkov too much either. And I think we're going to get a point-fighting kickboxing match for 15 minutes. I would venture to say there's probably not a finish in this fight, and more than likely it goes to decision again. Now, no two fights are the same, and usually the second fight is different, which would mean we probably would get a finish here. But with it being 3 rounds, I think it goes to a decision, and I think we get a split decision at the end of it. I think it's going to be a point-fighting kickboxing match. I think there's going to be a lot of feints. I think there's going to be a lot of low kicks, a lot of head kicks, a lot of jabs, using a lot of lateral movement and staying on the outside. This fight's probably going to be boring, and like I said, probably going to play out like a point-fighting matchup. And when you give me that kind of matchup, I'm taking the underdog. I'm going to go Alexander Volkov. I believe I picked him in the first fight, like I said. And I'm going to take him again in this rematch in a 3-rounder. I think a 3-rounder favors Volkov a lot more than it does Gane. I think Volkov hits harder, I'm sorry. And I think he can have some big moments here. And like I said, even if he doesn't, I think it plays out with a lot of fakes, a lot of feints, a lot of counters, a lot of staring in the mirror and moving on the outside. And I think Volkov can steal a win here and win by decision. So I'm going to go Alexander Volkov to beat Ciryl Gane, 29-28 split decision. I think this fight probably ends by a split decision, with it again being 3 rounds. And I like Volkov. I think he's on the upward trajectory. I think he's got a lot of confidence here. And I think Gane is looking to get a win, probably looking to make a statement, but Volkov is a hard guy to do that against. So give me Alexander Volkov, 29-28 split decision to get a win back against Ciryl Gane. All right, and now we're at the co-main event of the evening in the welterweight division. You have a battle between Shavkat Nomad Rakhmonov coming into this fight, I believe 19-0, 18-0, something like that, with all finishes, taking on Ian the Future Machado Garry, coming in at 15 victories with no defeats. Undefeated fighter, somebody's O has got to go. I think this is going to be close, but let me just say this. I have given Machado Garry a lot of flack. I picked Jeff Neal against him. I picked him to knock out Song Kenan, I believe, and man, that almost went up in flames for me. But I picked MVP against him, and realistically, I think MVP could have won that fight. I think that was a very close fight, and the wrestling, the back control, the takedowns of Garry were what won him the fight, but he didn't really do much on the feet. And in that 3rd round, I thought MVP could have taken it. Excuse me. I think it could have been a split decision and going the way of Michael Venom Page. Now, against Shavkat, if we're comparing opponents, Jeff Neal versus Shavkat, Jeff Neal versus Ian Garry. Jeff Neal had more success against Shavkat, but Shavkat's performance was more impressive than Garry's was against Neal. I bet Jeff Neal against Shavkat. I bet Jeff Neal against Ian Machado Garry. I missed both of those. But I was closer to getting it, I feel like, in the Garry fight than I was the Shavkat fight. Even though Shavkat got rocked with that straight left hand on the uppercut and the right hook, and it looked like maybe we were going to get it, we did it. But Garry, he won the fight, but again, it's just not impressive. He's never really having super impressive performances. The last one I would say was the come-from-behind win against Song Kenan, but you look at Song Kenan's recent track record, he's not really doing much except beating Rolando Bedoya as a huge underdog, and, Bedoya proved to not really be, UFC level. And then you look at Daniel Rodriguez, the head kick in the first round. That was a beautiful head kick. Crossed into the head kick, dropped D-Rod. First man to finish him in the UFC. After that, he got finished by Neil Magny. I think first man to knock out D-Rod, not finish him, because I think he had been submitted before, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that Garry is going to be competitive on the feet. He fights on the outside. He uses good kicks to the head, good kicks to the body. A really good lead head kick. I think he can use that against Shavkat. Shavkat also, good head kicks, good 1-2s. Very good ability to kind of get off on that angle and stay on the parallel, like fight perpendicular to his opponent, find his angles, and follow up with those counter hooks. He's got very good hooks, very good head kicks, really solid grappling, and Machado Garry has good grappling as well. We've seen him use it in the fight against Michael Venom Page where he got his back. We've seen him get to good positions on the floor, almost submitted Neil Magny, didn't go for it, dropped him multiple times, let him back up. I just haven't been supremely impressed with a guy like Garry, and I think Shavkat is just hungrier than Garry. And I know that doesn't really mean much in terms of breaking down a fight, but I think Shavkat out-wrestles Ian Garry, 8, 9 out of 10 times. We've heard that in training, he has submitted him. I think if Shavkat finishes this fight, more than likely it is Rakhmonov by submission. We've seen Garry get hurt. We've seen him get rocked, but, he's come back from adversity. I think Shavkat can knock him out. Like I said, he's got good hooks, good power, good 1-2s. He makes little slight adjustments where he just slightly gets off the center line and fires his hooks, fires his straight punches, just gets off on an angle, throws the head kick. He does things that people might look at him and think he's not that technical. He leaves his chin in the air, but he knows where he needs to be in order to avoid some shots, but he does get hit. Ian Garry, I feel like might be a little bit better defensively, but I think Rakhmonov is more aggressive offensively, and he has a more well-rounded game than Ian Garry. If Garry wins this fight, I think he could catch Shavkat with a shot and knock him out. Not that I think Garry is a knockout artist, but the striking style he has, the in-and-out movement, he might be able to catch Rakhmonov coming in with a big shot and rock him. Kind of like a Jeff Neal. I think it could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think on the ground, Rakhmonov was way better than Ian Garry. I think if he's on top, he's controlling Garry, beating him up with ground and pound, and eventually setting up a submission. And, I think it's going to be a lot of grappling. And I think on the feet, the fighter with the bigger moments, the more fight-impacting moments, the fighter who probably cuts his opponent more than I would think the other fighter has a chance to cut his opponent, would be Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think he's going to have the bigger moments. I think he's going to be more aggressive. I think he will get hit by counters. I think Garry will, catch Rakhmonov coming in, land some good shots, probably land some body kicks because Rakhmonov is hittable, but I just think Gary's a little bit more hittable than Rakhmonov, and Garry fights too close and too technical. He plays more of a point fighting style, and I don't really think you can beat a guy like Rakhmonov who is as well-rounded as Rakhmonov is. He can grapple, he can wrestle, he can clinch you up against the cage, he can land knees, he can land elbows in the clinch, he can land uppercuts, he can dirty box, he can get you on the ground, he can submit you. He's just a more well-rounded guy, and I think he is going to be looking for the finish from the time the fight starts to the time the fight ends. And I do think it will end inside the distance, and I do think that Rakhmonov will win this fight by submission. I'm going to go with a third-round arm triangle choke submission for Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think he gets takedowns in the second round. I think the first round's close, competitive. Garry probably lands a good shot, maybe hurts Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov clinches up, is able to get some takedowns, get on top, land elbows. Maybe he cuts up Ian Garry, and I think he wears on him until the takedowns become easier. And I think eventually he gets to the top, grabs the head and arm choke, gets the arm triangle, and gets the submission, and sets up the fight that was supposed to happen on this card, which was against the welterweight champion in Belal Muhammad. So give me Shavkat, Nomad, Rakhmonov to get the job done via third-round arm triangle choke submission in this fight. Like I said, I've picked against Garry so many times, it wouldn't surprise me if he found a way to win because Rakhmonov is hittable, but I just don't see it happening, man. I think Rakhmonov's too much for Ian Garry. And now we're at the main event of the evening for the UFC Flyweight Championship of the World with the defending champion in Alexandre Pantoja taking on Rising champion, moving over to the UFC. First fight in the UFC being for the Flyweight Championship in Kai Asakura. Now, Pantoja versus Asakura. It's It's a competitive fight, and I know a lot of people are not going to know too much about Asakura. They're going to sit there and think this is just somebody to get Pantoja an easy win, somebody to get easy takedowns, get an early submission. And although he could get an early submission, take down Asakura, take his back, find a way to get to the body triangle, get a rear naked choke, I think that's possible here. He could finish Asakura really early, and Asakura in the same token could knock him out. The one thing I like about Asakura is he does keep his hands pretty low, but I don't think that's something that he's going to have a disadvantage in against a guy like Pantoja, who also just kind of runs into the fire, leaves his chin on the center line, and throws big bombs, and gets clipped along the way. I also give Asakura the advantage in the fact that this is a fighter that Pantoja has not fought before. He fought Brandon Moreno a handful of times. He fought Brandon Royval a handful of times. A lot of these guys that Pantoja's defending the belt against, he's already had multiple encounters with them inside the promotion. He's been able to develop, reads to their tendencies. He's been able to make reads on their style. Now, Asakura is a very good striker. A lot of lateral movement, good in and out movement, and vicious knees to the body. Even switching stances, throwing good knees to the body, very powerful round kicks, good leg kicks, good body kicks, throws kicks up top to the head. And I've seen him showcase good clinch and takedown defense against the ropes in Rizin. Because, in Rizin, it's not a cage, it's ropes, it's a ring. And I've seen him be able to defend takedowns. I've seen him be able to get taken down and work his way back up to the feet. Now, has he fought a grappler the level of the champion in Pantoja? No. And most people in the UFC are not going to have experience fighting a guy with the grappling the level of an Alexandre Pantoja. He's one of the best grapplers in the world, aside from being one of the best grapplers or the best grappler in the flyweight division. He just wades himself into the fire. He doesn't care if he gets hit. He'll find a way to, catch you on a trip, find a way to tie you up, drag you down to the ground, throw a 4 or 5 punch combination, punctuate with a low kick, push down to your hips, get the takedowns. And that didn't work to the best of its ability against Steve Erceg. He was able to win that fight by decision, but a lot of people thought that Erceg could have got the championship win. And here's the deal. That's another fighter where Pantoja didn't have experience fighting him, and it was a very difficult test for him. Did he still get takedowns? Yes. Did he still get to the top position? Yes. Did he look to set up submissions? Yes. But he still gets hit. He got hit a lot. He got cracked, but he still walked through it. I think Asakura does have the knockout power to put down Pantoja. Now, Asakura has been knocked out before. He got knocked out by Kyoji Horiguchi, and he got knocked out by Manel Kape. Now, both of those fighters have been in the UFC before. Manel Kape, recently losing to Muhammad Mukayev, and then with Kyoji Horiguchi, he did fight Demetrius Johnson back in the day for the flyweight championship, and that was a competitive fight. Asakura did actually beat Horiguchi via knockout the first time they fought, though. So it was 1-1 in the rematches, or the set of matches, I guess you could say. I think Asakura has all the weapons to beat a guy like Pantoja. I've picked against Pantoja on this podcast more times than I can count, and he makes me look dumb almost every time, except for that Erceg one. Erceg just made a brief error in that last round, and it cost him the fight. The thing about Pantoja is he knows how to win. He might not be the most technical. He might not have the best defense. He might not even have, high-level striking, because his striking is not that high level. He does have a decent right hand, and he does punctuate his low kicks, or his combinations with low kicks. He's got a very good chopping low kick. But I think the fact that he hasn't fought Asakura before, I think the fact that this is a new challenge, obviously this is a lot of pressure on Asakura. He's been a champion in Rizin for a long time, and he's coming into the UFC and fighting the best of the best in his division for his first fight. I doubt he expected to come in and fight the champion in his first bout in the promotion, but that's what's happening. And I do think that there's a huge grappling advantage on the side of Pantoja. If he takes down Asakura and takes his back, which more than likely will happen, then yeah, I think if Pantoja wins, it's probably by a submission, probably by a rear naked choke. He probably catches Asakura stepping in, gets to a body lock, gets to a trip, spins and takes the back, puts in the body triangle, and locks up a rear naked choke submission. But I am going to go on the... Man, I'm picking a lot of underdogs today. I'm going to take Asakura. I love those knees to the body that this guy throws. And yes, you can throw those knees and get those knees caught and get yourself taken down. But I almost feel like the only way you're going to be able to put down a guy like Pantoja is with a body shot. He's been hit to the head so many times. He's been rocked so many times and still can walk through it. You can't walk through too many body shots. And this guy, Asakura, he's got vicious kicks to the body, vicious knees to the body, can switch stance and throw knees to the body, sets it up perfectly. And I know Pantoja is more than likely going to be studying that and trying to develop takedown counters to those knees, timing the knees and getting a double leg, timing the knees and spinning to an angle, taking the back. You know, and I do think that there is a possibility, like I said, that he just takes him down and submits him and the fight's over. But I think Asakura is going to be very quick, very fast, very crisp. And I think he's going to catch Pantoja closing the distance with a knee to the body. And I think he's going to crumble him and put him down. Give me Kai Asakura to become the new UFC flyweight champion via a third round body shot TKO with a knee right up the middle to the liver or to the sternum. He's going to catch him with a knee stepping in, and you're just going to see Pantoja fall down and get taken out. So I'm going Kai Asakura to become the new UFC flyweight champion in his UFC debut. I feel like this is pointing to an Asakura title win. So that's what I'm going to go with. It's a new opponent for Pantoja, somebody he hasn't had time to develop the reads, develop the counters, and develop a strategy for his game, you know, inside the UFC. And I think that's going to be a problem against a guy as dangerous as Kai. So give me Kai Asakura to become the new UFC flyweight champion via a third round body shot TKO against Alexandre Pantoja. All right, that's it for my UFC 310 preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with your own knee to the liver so that you can catch all the future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.